A young woman, Maya Johnson, quietly entered Brooklyn High School. Her intention was to complete her final year of studies without drawing any attention, becoming just another face in the bustling corridors. However, before Maya could even orient herself, Ashley Mitchell, a girl with a striking appearance and a disposition as frigid as ice, identified Maya as an opportune target for her usual torment. The harassment began subtly, with derisive chuckles and hushed, unlined remarks, escalating to outright public embarrassments designed to humiliate her. As Ashley confidently anticipated Maya's breakdown, the entire student body gathered, phones poised to capture what they expected to be Maya's ultimate defeat. What none of them understood, however, was Maya Johnson's background. She wasn't merely a transfer student from Chicago. She was a meticulously trained individual, having spent her formative years developing discipline and control in her father's martial arts gymnasium. Today, Maya was prepared to demonstrate the formidable results of that training. The yellow school bus came to a halt before Brooklyn High. Students disembarked in a boisterous wave. Maya Johnson was the last to exit, her grip tight on her backpack straps, consciously avoiding the scrutinizing gazes of those around her. These stares were familiar to Maya. Having relocated multiple times throughout her academic career, she understood that her presence invariably invited a silent tide of unspoken questions. To her new peers, the girl from Chicago remained an enigma. Her unfamiliar appearance, coupled with the stark contrast of her complexion in a predominantly white student body, sparked considerable curiosity. She surveyed the imposing red brick structure of Brooklyn High. The muted gray windows and the densely packed hallways mirrored the environments of her previous schools. Nothing about it felt novel or unexpected. Years of moving between different schools and towns had taught Maya a fundamental, unarticulated principle. Remain unnoticed, leave no discernible impression, avoid attracting any form of attention. This strategy had become her sole method of self-preservation. Maya tightened her hold on her backpack, merging with the flow of students entering the building. She moved with a deliberate, steady pace, careful to avoid any physical contact and to deflect any eye contact. Despite her best efforts, however, she still detected fleeting, inquisitive glances tinged with skepticism. Soft, indistinct whispers brushed against her ears, their malicious intent clearly discernible. Maya was acutely aware that she was under intense observation, dissected and analyzed from the very first moment of her arrival. The young woman proceeded through the halls in quiet contemplation, a subtle sadness settling in her heart. Maya understood that evading these stares was an impossibility. They were an inherent part of her existence. A black girl in an environment where she felt out of place. Her only recourse was to maintain her composure, endure the scrutiny, and hope that this quiet resilience would see her safely through her final year. Maya harbored no desire for friendships or any inclination to stand out. Her sole aspiration was a peaceful academic year, culminating in graduation and a departure from this institution without any complications. Yet, as Maya navigated the crowded hallways of Brooklyn High, she remained oblivious to the fact that her carefully crafted plans for anonymity were about to be shattered by an unforeseen confrontation. A confrontation that would not only test her inner fortitude but fundamentally alter her perception of herself. And it all commenced in this very moment of quiet observation. On her inaugural day at Brooklyn High, Maya Johnson made her entrance. As Maya passed the series of light blue lockers, searching for her assigned number amidst the throng, she sensed an immediate shift in the surrounding atmosphere. The general hubbub subsided, and animated conversations dissolved into hushed whispers. Students in Maya's vicinity subtly shifted away, as if by unspoken agreement, creating an opening for someone approaching from behind her. Maya did not turn, but her instincts alerted her to the arrival of a significant presence. Amidst the assembled students, Ashley Mitchell commanded attention. She was a tall, fair-skinned girl with luxuriant, perfectly sculpted blonde hair. Her expensive plaid attire accentuated her slender, 18-year-old physique. Each of her movements exuded an almost defiant confidence. projecting an aura of absolute self-assurance. At Brooklyn High, Ashley was more than just affluent and popular. She was the architect of the school's unspoken social order, wielding considerable influence within the classrooms and hallways. Ashley never moved without her entourage. Flanking her on either side were her two devoted best friends, Brianna, whose fiery red hair and sharp gaze quickly assessed anyone who might pose a threat to Ashley's status, and Courtney, characterized by her dark brown hair, slightly shorter than Ashley's, and her tendency to speak only when necessary, serving as a discreet but highly effective source of information within the school. However, the true source of Ashley's unassailable position at Brooklyn High extended beyond mere wealth or the striking attractiveness of her companions. The most significant element was the presence of Zach Mitchell, Ashley's elder brother, the celebrated star of the school's football team. Zach, with his broad, imposing shoulders, was invariably clad in his signature number 12 sports jersey. He possessed an easy, natural demeanor, yet his gaze consistently held an undercurrent of arrogance, a challenging glint that suggested dominion over the entire school. Positioned alongside Zach, like a loyal operative ready to instigate discord at a moment's notice, was Luke Rodriguez. Luke, lanky and possessing sharp, roguish eyes, exuded an unpredictable cunning. While the precise nature of Luke's relationship with Ashley and Zach remained a subject of speculation, it was universally understood that Luke relished creating chaos purely for the thrill of it. Troublemaking was his assertion of power. Accompanied by her formidable retinue, Ashley proceeded down the hallway as a sovereign entering her domain. Every gaze, every hushed remark was directed toward them, a palpable blend of admiration and apprehension. New students, or those unfamiliar with the school's dynamics, quickly learned that survival at Brooklyn High necessitated understanding and respecting the established hierarchy dictated by Ashley Mitchell. Maya briefly met Ashley's gaze, enough to register the cold, haughty expression directed her way, a look that was both assessing and implicitly cautionary. Maya immediately grasped the unspoken message. She was the newcomer, and Ashley was asserting her territorial claim. The implicit decree was clear. This black girl was forbidden from crossing the invisible boundary that had already been demarcated. Maya lowered her head, resuming the task of unlocking her locker, deliberately disregarding Ashley's challenging stare. Internally, however, a seed of unease began to germinate. Despite her concerted efforts to remain inconspicuous, to be silent and unseen as planned, Maya realized the futility of attempting complete invisibility in this new environment. The young woman quietly secured her locker, adjusted her backpack strap, and proceeded toward her first class. As she departed the immediate vicinity, Maya distinctly sensed that this was merely the prologue. Ashley Mitchell and her circle would not be satisfied with a mere passing observation. A deep-seated instinct told Maya that she had inadvertently stepped into a landscape fraught with hidden perils she had not anticipated. And at Brooklyn High, that unspoken power bore only one name: Ashley Mitchell. The first class unfolded at a leisurely pace. Maya selected a secluded seat in the corner of the classroom, allowing her to discreetly observe her surroundings without drawing attention to herself. Yet, despite her best efforts to avoid it, she could still detect occasional, sharp, cold glances from Ashley, conveying a sense of calculated deliberation, as if she was silently formulating a plan. For Ashley Mitchell, Maya's arrival presented an ideal opportunity to reinforce her dominance at Brooklyn High. Each academic year introduced new students, and invariably, one individual became the designated target for Ashley to solidify her paramount position within the school's social hierarchy. Maya Johnson, the quiet and reserved student from Chicago, was the perfect candidate. Ashley's selection of her victims was always nuanced. A student perceived as too vulnerable would attract little notice. However, someone like Maya, outwardly quiet, distinct in her difference, and inadvertently conspicuous due to her very silence, was an exceptionally advantageous choice. By succeeding in breaking Maya, Ashley would broadcast a potent message to the entire student body. Regardless of one's identity or origin, no one could operate beyond her sphere of influence. Merely a few hours after the initial class concluded, subtle whispers began to circulate behind Maya's back. Initially, these were innocuous observations, such as, "She's the new girl from Chicago. Doesn't she look a little odd?" However, these whispers quickly devolved into malicious snickers. Maya could feel each word slicing through the air, striking her ears like tiny, sharp thorns. Though not directly aimed at her face, they were deliberately uttered with sufficient volume for her to clearly perceive them. "Does she not know how to dress? Do people in Chicago all wear such unfashionable clothes? She probably can't even articulate a coherent thought." Maya maintained her forward gaze, feigning ignorance of the taunts, but her hand instinctively tightened around the pencil she held. She was all too familiar with the sting of such disparaging remarks, stemming from her skin color, her background, or simply her status as the newcomer. Maya understood that any outward reaction, however slight, would only exacerbate the situation. Ashley observed from a distance, a faint smile playing on her lips as she noted Maya's apparent indifference to the provocations. To Ashley, this silence was an unequivocal indicator of weakness, and weakness was precisely what she sought to leverage in asserting her dominance. Ashley leaned in and whispered something to Brianna and Courtney. Both girls immediately erupted into loud laughter, their voices deliberately directed toward Maya, ensuring that other students in the vicinity would notice even more. Amidst the cacophony, Maya remained impassive. She compelled herself to breathe deeply, maintaining a steady heartbeat, attempting to suppress the growing unease within her. Maya recognized that silence was her only viable option at that juncture. What she failed to realize, however, was that her silence, far from de-escalating the situation, was inadvertently serving as a catalyst for Ashley. Ashley harbored a profound disdain for indifference. Maya's refusal to engage was perceived as a silent challenge. Ashley's pride and ego could not tolerate a new student arriving at the school and so easily disregarding her presence. Ashley Mitchell narrowed her eyes at Maya, a mixture of curiosity and mounting frustration brewing within her. A part of Ashley found herself increasingly drawn into this game. Maya Johnson was no longer merely an easily vanquished opponent. She had become a challenge, an intricate puzzle that Ashley felt compelled to solve. Maya calmly rose as the bell signaling the break rang, quickly exiting the classroom. Her outward demeanor remained composed, but within her mind, a single thought resonated with sharp clarity. Brooklyn High was not going to facilitate the peaceful year she had envisioned. Ashley Mitchell had unequivocally identified her as a target, and Maya understood with absolute certainty that this confrontation would not conclude with her silence. It appeared the longer Maya remained quiet, the more agitated Ashley became. She was unaccustomed to being ignored, and she certainly could not countenance the presence of someone who could so casually overlook the influence she had diligently cultivated at Brooklyn High. Maya's unnerving silence had unwittingly awakened a deep, primal instinct within Ashley, the instinct of a predator eager to assert its dominance by utterly vanquishing its prey. Lunchtime at Brooklyn High was always a significant occasion. It was not merely a time for students to congregate and eat, but also when the school's unspoken power dynamics were most conspicuously displayed. Who sat with whom, who conversed with whom, who was ostracized, and who was sought after. All these aspects were subtly yet undeniably conveyed within this social arena. Ashley, presiding over this unwritten hierarchy, consistently occupied the central table, a vantage point where she was readily visible to all. She and her companions maintained a relaxed, almost theatrical demeanor, treating their surroundings as a curated performance for their amusement. And today, Maya was the unwitting performer in this particular spectacle. As Maya entered the cafeteria, she immediately noticed several unusual glances directed her way. This was not mere curiosity. It was an expectant scrutiny, as if observers were anticipating a noteworthy event. Maya proceeded slowly towards the farthest table, a secluded corner generally avoided due to its distance from the central gathering, often considered a refuge for those who felt unwelcome. For Maya, however, it represented the safest option for circumventing unwanted attention. But today was not destined to be a typical day. Ashley had already orchestrated a plan designed to compel Maya to abandon her reticent stance. Ashley disliked waiting and harbored a particular aversion to individuals like Maya, those who failed to immediately acknowledge the absolute authority she wielded within the school. Consequently, Ashley resolved to impart a minor lesson today, one sufficient to impress upon the entire student body that underestimating her was an unacceptable transgression. Ashley subtly inclined her head toward Brianna and Courtney, issuing a discreet signal. Brianna promptly rose, and together with Courtney, they made their way to the far table where Maya was seated. Ashley smiled coldly, a full cup of juice held in her hand. She slowly stood and followed her two friends. Her stride was confident, each step radiating an unambiguous message of power and defiance. Maya kept her head bowed, eating in silence, but her instincts alerted her to an impending approach. She could hear footsteps drawing nearer, and upon looking up, her gaze met Ashley's sharp, challenging stare. A peculiar silence descended upon the cafeteria. Students at other tables immediately turned their attention to the unfolding scene, their quietude so profound that Maya could discern the rapid thrum of her own heartbeat. Maya understood precisely what was about to transpire, yet she remained resolute in her decision not to grant Ashley the reaction she desired, either anger or fear. Ashley halted directly before Maya's table, her lips curving into a subtle, malevolent smile. She leaned forward, speaking softly, yet audibly enough for the entire room to hear. "You appear to be rather solitary, aren't you? Why choose to sit all the way over here in the corner?" A soft ripple of laughter emanated from Brianna and Courtney, joined by hesitant chuckles from the surrounding students. Maya remained silent, her gaze fixed on Ashley with an unnerving calm. Ashley did not await a response, emitting another light chuckle before ostentatiously, yet seemingly accidentally, tilting the large juice cup she held. The dark red liquid cascaded over Maya's tray, splattering her food and dripping onto the table. Ashley immediately straightened, feigning surprise, and called out in a tone of manufactured apology, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I spilled it." A wave of laughter swept through the cafeteria. Curious and amused eyes were riveted on Maya, eagerly anticipating her dramatic outburst. However, Maya did not conform to the expected narrative. The young woman simply remained seated for a few moments, then gently placed her spoon back on her tray. Her expression remained serene, betraying no hint of anger or apprehension. Slowly, Maya stood, retrieved the juice-stained tray, and calmly walked to the waste bin located at the far end of the room, depositing the entire tray within. Her movements were precise, devoid of any extraneous actions. The cafeteria fell into an absolute hush, a disquieting silence that Ashley had never before witnessed. The laughter ceased. No one dared to jeer. Maya's peculiar composure left everyone feeling awkward, perplexed, and intrigued. As Maya returned to her seat to retrieve her backpack, she cast one final glance at Ashley. The look was cold, but not one of anger. Instead, it conveyed an eerie calmness, so profound that it felt unsettling. It was a chilling composure that Ashley had never encountered. Ashley suddenly felt as though a fundamental shift had occurred within the game she had orchestrated. For the first time, a palpable sense of unease washed over her. She could not fathom the source of this reaction, but one thing became undeniably clear. Maya was not the docile individual she had initially presumed, and this realization instilled in Ashley a deep sense of disquiet. As Maya departed the cafeteria, a strange atmosphere permeated the entire space. No one dared to speak, yet an unspoken understanding settled upon everyone. Ashley Mitchell's game might have just commenced, but Maya Johnson had officially emerged as a far more unpredictable adversary than Ashley had ever previously encountered. That afternoon, following Maya's departure from the cafeteria, Ashley returned to her customary position at the heart of the dining area. She maintained her usual composed posture, her back straight, her gaze slightly elevated, as if entirely unaffected by the preceding events. Yet, only she was aware of the rapid pounding of her heart within her chest. Something was amiss. Something was profoundly wrong. Ashley was accustomed to her targets reacting unequivocally to her actions, displaying anger, fear, confusion, or even succumbing to tears in full view of the entire school. This was the reaction she anticipated, the ultimate capitulation that would unequivocally prove her dominion over Brooklyn High. However, Maya Johnson did not respond in kind. Not only did she refuse to yield, but Maya exhibited no reaction whatsoever. The calm, indifferent demeanor of the new student, subtle in its very presence, made Ashley feel as though she had propelled herself into an unfamiliar territory she had never navigated before. For the first time in her life, she felt the erosion of the absolute power she had painstakingly constructed, all due to an individual who had done nothing more than remain silent. Ashley surveyed the cafeteria. Soft whispers began to ripple through the room like a tide, gentle yet audible enough to capture Ashley's attention. Fleeting glances, awkward murmurs that quickly dissipated as her eyes swept over them. For the first time, Ashley perceived that the curious, skeptical gazes of the assembled students were not directed at Maya, but rather were squarely focused on her. The formidable young woman of Brooklyn High began to experience a distinct sense of discomfort. Ashley unconsciously tightened her grip on her water glass, her icy gaze shifting toward Brianna and Courtney, her two steadfast companions. Courtney immediately averted her gaze, pretending to be engrossed in her mobile phone. Brianna offered a weak, hesitant smile, as if she too felt a sense of unease regarding Maya's peculiar reaction. The familiar atmosphere had undergone a transformation, and Ashley could feel it. The faces that once engaged in laughter and conversation around her now seemed guarded, maintaining an unusual distance, as if attempting to decipher the true nature of the unfolding situation. Ashley detested this development. The curiosity, the skepticism, these were sentiments she had never before encountered. Ashley suddenly stood, gathered her bag, and exited the cafeteria. Brianna and Courtney promptly followed, but Ashley did not pause to wait for them. She moved swiftly down the school hallway, her cold gaze fixed on the familiar row of lockers. She had established her position at Brooklyn High by asserting her absolute superiority, by demonstrating that no one could withstand the pressure she exerted. Yet now, all of that seemed to pale in comparison to Maya's perplexing composure. Ashley understood that the sole element sustaining her influence was the ability to compel submission from others. If that submission was challenged, her power would inevitably falter. Brianna and Courtney eventually caught up with Ashley, walking in silence beside her, hesitant to voice any observation. Brianna cast a glance at Ashley and cautiously spoke. "She isn't like the others, is she?" Ashley furrowed her brow. Brianna's statement intensified her discomfort. Brianna had inadvertently confirmed her deepest apprehension. Maya was not merely an ordinary student, someone who could be easily subdued like all those who had come before her. Maya was different, and it was this very difference that instilled in Ashley a novel sense of disquiet. Ashley abruptly halted, turned to face Brianna, and demanded coldly, "What exactly do you mean by that?" Brianna appeared taken aback by Ashley's reaction, quickly altering her tone and gesturing dismissively. Perhaps she's merely putting on a brave front, feigning fortitude while inwardly trembling with apprehension. Ashley tilted her head, her gaze fixed on Brianna for an extended period, before slowly shaking her head, a subtle, sardonic smile gracing her lips. "No," she stated. "She's not apprehensive. That's precisely the crux of the issue." The utterance of these words even surprised Ashley herself, a confession that intensified her discomfort. It was unprecedented for her to acknowledge someone's lack of fear towards her. To admit such a thing would feel akin to relinquishing the formidable influence she had diligently cultivated. Courtney tentatively interjected, attempting to diffuse the mounting tension. "Regardless, Ashley, perhaps she simply had a stroke of good fortune this occasion. Within a day or two, matters will likely revert to their customary state. Who, after all, will persistently defy you?" Ashley emitted a soft, tinged with bitterness chuckle, her gaze drifting down the corridor. Yet a profound sense of disquietude intensified within her, akin to a creeping shadow steadily engulfing her thoughts. Maya Johnson, a newcomer from Chicago, possessed a quietude and an unnerving reserve that, for the first time, instilled self-doubt in Ashley. Ashley understood that if she did not swiftly neutralize this perceived threat, her authority would inevitably diminish. Ashley continued her silent progress, but her inner peace had evaporated. For the first time in her existence, Ashley Mitchell confronted a truth she had consistently evaded. Perhaps she wasn't as robust or as commanding as she had always convinced herself she was. This burgeoning feeling of unease persisted, quiet yet potent. Ashley was unaccustomed to this sensation of disquiet. The more she contemplated Maya's cool, enigmatic disposition, the more she felt an erosion of her self-control. It was an uncomfortable sensation, much like a minor abrasion that, with each passing day, throbbed and expanded, not grievous enough to halt her, but impossible to disregard. Ashley was acutely aware that decisive action was imperative. Otherwise, this gnawing feeling would escalate beyond her capacity to manage it. It was from this realization that Ashley resolved to elevate the stakes of their confrontation. In the ensuing days, the torment directed at Maya commenced in a more calculated and conspicuous manner. What began as hushed remarks and veiled taunts rapidly escalated into overt actions designed to exert palpable pressure upon her. In every classroom, every hallway, and at every appearance Maya made, Ashley and her confederates ensured she felt unwelcome at Brooklyn High. Within academic settings, Ashley consistently initiated the harassment. She and Brianna frequently occupied adjacent seats to Maya, deliberately fabricating and disseminating mocking narratives at a volume intended for Maya to overhear. Each syllable felt like a prick of a needle against Maya's consciousness, yet she offered no outward sign of distress. Not once did Maya look up or betray any indication of discomfort, maintaining her impassive, resolute demeanor, thereby denying Ashley the satisfaction she craved. This very composure further amplified Ashley's burgeoning insecurity, compelling her to escalate her tactics. Gymnasium class provided Ashley with a prime opportunity to assert her dominance, primarily due to the presence of Zach Mitchell. Her brother, the celebrated captain of the football team, commanded the admiration of the entire student body. With Zach's involvement, anyone Ashley wished to degrade was effectively within her reach. Maya would prove no exception. Zach, tall and imposing with the self-assured bearing of a seasoned athlete, was affable towards all. Nevertheless, it was common knowledge that Zach would never decline any request from Ashley, regardless of its malevolence. Loyalty to his sister superseded all else for Zach. During the current gymnasium session, as students congregated on the field, Zach subtly signaled Luke Rodriguez, a known troublemaker and close confidant, who readily embraced opportunities for bullying with evident relish. Luke offered a slight smile, immediately comprehending Zach's unspoken directive. As the class commenced, students promptly organized into groups for their warm-up routines. Maya invariably sought a secluded spot, away from the general scrutiny. However, on this occasion, Zach and Luke deliberately approached her, casually positioning themselves alongside her in the formation. Ashley observed from a distance, a chilling smile playing on her lips as she noted Maya's barely perceptible tensing. Nevertheless, Maya remained composed, her gaze fixed forward, endeavoring to disregard the proximity of the two young men. This unexpected placidity from Maya caused Zach to furrow his brow in surprise. Yet, he did not falter. When the gymnasium instructor directed the students to commence their warm-up laps around the field, Zach seized the moment to close in on Maya. He accelerated ahead, then abruptly decelerated, forcing Maya to swerve. Her foot faltered, but she swiftly recovered her equilibrium, maintaining her stride. Zack responded with an irritating grin, repeating the maneuver multiple times, deliberately impeding Maya's progress and compelling her to constantly adjust her pace and trajectory. Luke, emboldened by Zack's actions, promptly joined the malicious stratagem. He feigned collisions with Maya's shoulder as he ran past, each impact significant enough to cause a slight stumble, though not enough to draw the instructor's attention. Maya registered each impact distinctly, but still refrained from reacting. Her eyes remained fixed on the path ahead, resolute in her determination not to betray any anger or vulnerability that Ashley anticipated. Maya understood that her reaction was precisely what Zack and Luke desired, and she was steadfast in her resolve not to grant them that gratification. Ashley watched intently from afar, scrutinizing Maya's every movement. The more she observed, the more perplexed she became by Maya's unwavering composure. This icy detachment made Ashley feel as though she had lost command of the situation, contrary to her earlier assumptions. A wave of confusion and disappointment washed over Ashley. For a fleeting moment, Ashley questioned if she had misjudged Maya, perhaps underestimating her resilience beneath a seemingly fragile exterior. However, her pride swiftly dismissed this notion. She resolved to persevere, as Ashley had never been one to concede defeat easily. Upon the conclusion of the gymnasium class, Maya departed the field with quiet dignity, devoid of any complaint or resentful expression. This stoic demeanor elicited surprised and admiring glances from her peers. Murmurs spread, clearly audible to Ashley. "That's peculiar. She didn't react at all. Maya is genuinely different." Ashley clenched her fist, her heart pounding, recognizing that the situation had escalated far beyond her initial intentions. Maya Johnson's silence was not merely an act of endurance. It was a silent challenge to Ashley Mitchell's authority. The sensation of her influence slipping through her grasp fueled Ashley's mounting impatience. With each instance of Maya calmly navigating her subtle provocations, with each display of her cool, collected demeanor, Ashley felt her pride suffer a deeper wound. For Ashley Mitchell, dominion at Brooklyn High was an unassailable prerogative. Yet, here was Maya, a quiet, enigmatic, and unconventional presence, directly imperiling the position Ashley had so painstakingly established. Following a series of failed attempts at subtle bullying and provocation, Ashley recognized the necessity for a clear and decisive escalation. A direct confrontation was required, one potent enough to shatter Mia's composed facade. She desired a public spectacle, a demonstration of Mia's utter humiliation to solidify her own unassailable power. The opportune moment presented itself during lunch, when the cafeteria buzzed with activity, drawing all eyes towards the central stage of social interaction. Ashley designated this familiar setting as the arena for her definitive performance, intending it to be the final occasion she would tolerate Maya's infuriating tranquility. At lunch that day, Ashley entered the cafeteria with an air of composed yet frigid resolve, Brianna and Courtney flanking her. Maya occupied her customary corner table at the rear of the room, a chosen vantage point to eschew unwanted attention. Today, however, the dynamic would be irrevocably altered. Ashley harbored a precise objective and was resolute in its flawless execution. Ashley proceeded directly to the room's center, her usual dining location, her gaze unwavering from Maya. Nearby students began to take notice, their conversations ceasing as curiosity mounted, anticipating an unfolding event. Ashley, tray in hand, positioned herself and feigned a casual trajectory past Maya's table, as if by mere happenstance. However, mere steps from Maya's proximity, Ashley abruptly increased her velocity, deliberately colliding with Maya's shoulder with the full force of her body. The impact was substantial enough to dislodge Mia's tray, sending its contents cascading onto the floor with a sharp, jarring sound that echoed through the cafeteria's hushed atmosphere. A few droplets of sauce splattered onto her pristine white footwear. Ashley halted directly before Maya, a brief, triumphant smirk flickering across her features. She offered an exaggerated shrug, her eyes alight with the smug satisfaction of believing she had finally elicited Maya's ire, or at least shattered her detached composure. "Oh, forgive me. I didn't perceive your presence," Ashley declared loudly, her voice laden with sarcasm, prompting nervous titters from the surrounding students, a Pavlovian response to Ashley's pronouncements. Yet, with equal abruptness, the cafeteria plunged into profound silence. All attention gravitated towards Maya, keenly anticipating her reaction. The consensus was firm. No matter Maya's perceived fortitude, this indignity would prove insurmountable. However, the subsequent spectacle defied all expectations. Maya exhibited no trace of anger. She was neither flustered nor agitated, nor did she hastily attempt to retrieve the scattered provisions. Instead, she stood tall, exuding a natural, commanding presence, her eyes locked with Ashley's, conveying a calm, lucid understanding, as if she had discerned Ashley's entire scheme from its inception. Maya remained silent, yet the gentle, enigmatic smile that graced her lips conveyed more potent meaning than any words could. This was not the smile of someone subjected to humiliation, but rather that of an individual in absolute command of the situation, utterly unaffected by puerile machinations. Ashley regarded Maya, a palpable chill coursing through her. For the first time in her existence, Ashley experienced the insidious creep of genuine apprehension. Maya's gaze and smile evoked a sense of profound, unfathomable depth, something beyond Ashley's comprehension. Ashley's hand involuntarily trembled. She found herself unable to avert her gaze from Maya's countenance. Maya's quiet, placid expression had evolved into a public indictment of the authority Ashley had always assumed was beyond dispute. A profound uncertainty began to dawn within Ashley, unsettling her more than ever. She started to ponder Maya's true nature. Was she genuinely fearless? Or was Maya simply unlike any individual Ashley had previously targeted? This erosion of control instilled a growing sense of dread in Ashley. Meanwhile, Maya remained stationary, her eyes never leaving Ashley's, her smile retaining its subtle lightness, yet imbued with a chilling defiance. Ashley eventually averted her gaze, hastily retreating to her table, endeavoring to conceal her trembling hand. Whispers began to resurface in the cafeteria, more insistent this time. "Unbelievable. Did you witness that?" Maya isn't the least bit intimidated. "Ashley, she's visibly shaking, isn't she?" Ashley gritted her teeth, struggling to suppress the intensifying fear within her. She recognized that the confrontation she had initiated had spiraled completely beyond her command. And for the first time, Ashley Mitchell questioned her ability to prevail against someone like Maya, an individual impervious to the overwhelming force Ashley had always championed. Maya's composed smile, her response to Ashley in the cafeteria, proved fleeting. Upon exiting the school grounds, away from the scrutinizing stares and the hushed whispers that followed her, Maya felt a profound sense of deflation, eclipsing the momentary surge of confidence she had projected. Beneath that cool exterior, a tempest was brewing within the young woman. Maya harbored no desire to confront such situations ever again. Returning to the modest residence at the end of the tranquil street where she resided with her father, Maya entered the living room and sank onto the familiar, worn sofa. She raised a hand to cover her face, closing her eyes, attempting to banish the oppressive weight that settled upon her chest. Painful recollections from her past, which she had diligently avoided, surged forth with vivid intensity, as if they had transpired only yesterday. Maya recalled the last instance she had lost control. It was 2 years prior, at her previous school in Chicago. A girl named Erica had subjected her to months of torment, deliberately provoking Maya until her emotional equilibrium shattered. In a swift, impulsive moment, everything unraveled. Maya reacted instinctively. employing the martial arts techniques her father had imparted since her youth for self-defense, but she had miscalculated her own strength. Erica sustained severe injuries and required hospitalization, necessitating Maya's transfer to a new school for a fresh start. Since that day, Maya had vowed never to lose control again. She harbored no wish to inflict harm upon anyone, particularly those who sought to inflict harm upon her. Yet now, facing Ashley's cruel taunts and increasingly aggressive provocations, Maya felt that vow was being severely tested. She recognized that continued silence and endurance might eventually lead to an inability to maintain her composure. The prospect filled her with dread. Lost in contemplation, Maya detected familiar footsteps approaching the door. Her father, Marcus Johnson, had returned from his martial arts training. Marcus, a former professional fighter, had once been a rising star in the boxing arena before an injury prematurely curtailed his career. From an early age, Maya had been rigorously trained by her father, not merely in self-defense, but also in cultivating inner fortitude and emotional regulation. Marcus consistently instilled in his daughter that martial arts encompassed more than mere combat. It was about confronting challenges with equanimity and self-mastery. Marcus immediately perceived the disquiet etched on Maya's features as he entered the room. He placed his bag on the floor, approached, and sat beside her, his voice warm with concern. "What transpired at school, sweetheart?" Maya opened her eyes, hesitated momentarily, then offered a slight nod. She drew a deep breath and began to recount the events at Brooklyn High, starting with her initial day, Ashley Mitchell's singular focus, the escalating provocations, and particularly the incident in the cafeteria. Marcus listened intently to every detail, his expression growing more serious with each word. Upon her conclusion, Maya lowered her head, her voice barely a whisper, as if striving to conceal her vulnerability. "I'm uncertain how much longer I can maintain my composure. I fear that if this continues, I will succumb to losing control once more, mirroring the past." Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder, his gaze radiating affection, yet tinged with profound seriousness. "Maya, I comprehend your apprehension. I know you have no desire to cause harm, but there are instances where you cannot dictate the actions of others. The sole aspect you can govern is your chosen response." Maya looked at her father, her eyes reflecting helplessness and doubt. "But if I react, I will cause injury. I cannot bear for that to happen again, Father." Marcus gently shook his head, his voice firm yet placid. "You are misinterpreting, Maya. You do not initiate the conflict, but you must be the one to resolve it. Employing martial arts does not inherently entail inflicting harm. Its purpose is to thwart the harm others intend to inflict upon you. At times, by remaining silent and enduring, others may perceive an impunity to continue their transgressions without consequence." He paused briefly before continuing in a soft yet resolute tone. "I imparted martial arts to you so you would grasp the significance of strength and self-control. I have faith in your capacity for self-regulation and believe you will not permit a repetition of past events. However, I also wish for you to understand that you are not obligated to passively endure injustice indefinitely. Occasionally, a measured response is the sole means of self-preservation and the definitive cessation of harm." Maya sat in silent contemplation, absorbing her father's counsel. Each sentence resonated deeply within her, awakening a dormant sentiment. She realized her father's wisdom. Perpetual silence was not the solution. If genuine tranquility was her objective, she would have to assert herself and decisively conclude the present predicament. Marcus gently drew his daughter into an embrace, his voice a tender whisper in her ear, yet imbued with an unwavering firmness. "I have always had confidence in you, Maya. Remember, your greatest strength resides not in your physical prowess, but in the discernment of when to stand firm and protect yourself." Maya closed her eyes slightly, a sense of relief gradually permeating her being. She now understood that this struggle was not one she had initiated, but one she would definitively and calmly conclude. And this time, Maya possessed absolute clarity on the course of action required. The following morning, as Maya stepped into the familiar corridors of Brooklyn High, she immediately sensed a palpable shift in the atmosphere. An alteration was evident, permeating the quiet murmurs and the inquisitive gazes that tracked her every movement. Maya recognized instantly that the situation had transcended mere casual teasing. Something more substantial was unfolding. A heavy sensation settled in her chest, but this time the unease was absent. Following her conversation with her father the preceding evening, Maya felt prepared to confront whatever lay ahead. Merely a few steps into the hallway, Maya identified the cause of the heightened attention. A small piece of paper was affixed to her locker. Maya approached slowly, clearly discerning the meticulously handwritten yet provocatively worded message. "After school today, behind the gymnasium. Be there if you do not wish to be labeled a coward permanently. Ashley Mitchell." Maya silently contemplated the words for a considerable duration. Around her, other students congregated in small groups, feigning occupation, but in reality, they were discreetly observing her reaction. It was universally understood that this was no ordinary threat. It was a public challenge Ashley intended for all to witness. Maya grasped the implication with perfect clarity. Ashley was once again asserting her absolute dominion, compelling Maya to either submit or retreat. Maya gently detached the paper, folded it with precision, and calmly placed it into her jacket pocket. Her countenance remained impassive, betraying no hint of fear or confusion. Internally, however, a surge of resolute thoughts intensified within Maya's heart. She comprehended that on this occasion she could not maintain her characteristic silence. Ashley and her cohorts would not relent. They would persist until they achieved their perceived victory before the entire student body. At that juncture, from a distance, Ashley commenced her approach down the hall, accompanied by Brianna, Courtney, Zach, and Luke. Their footsteps echoed sharply in the strangely hushed environment. Ashley directed a direct gaze at Maya, a cool, challenging smile gracing her lips. Ashley's eyes blazed with the accustomed confidence and arrogance she employed to intimidate others. However, this time, Maya did not falter. She met Ashley's gaze calmly, directly, and with unwavering determination. Ashley advanced, positioning herself directly in front of Maya, deliberately modulating her voice to ensure it carried to the surrounding students. "I trust you will present yourself, Maya. I am weary of witnessing your pathetic pretense of toughness. Today, I intend to impart a lesson so you comprehend your rightful station at Brooklyn High." Ashley paused, her smug smile widening as she continued in a more derisive tone. "Naturally, you retain the option of displaying cowardice. Simply fail to appear and continue your perpetual evasion." Muffled laughter emanated from Brianna and Courtney behind Ashley, amplifying the hallway's palpable tension. Maya still refrained from an immediate response. Instead of returning a glare, Maya maintained her composed demeanor, her gaze locked onto Ashley. When she finally broke the silence, her voice was steady and calm, yet it held an unmistakable authority. "I'll be there." This simple declaration hushed the entire hallway into an unnerving stillness. Ashley experienced a fleeting moment of surprise. She hadn't anticipated Maya would accept the confrontation so readily. However, she quickly concealed her astonishment behind a cool, self-assured smile. "Good. Don't let me down, Maya." Ashley turned and walked away, but a subtle, unsettling doubt began to creep into her thoughts. Maya's unwavering calm once again prompted Ashley to question her own motivations. Yet, backing down from this challenge was no longer an option. This power struggle had escalated too far, and Ashley understood better than anyone that this encounter would ultimately define her standing at Brooklyn High. As Ashley and her entourage departed, other students quickly dispersed, their hushed conversations buzzing with accounts of the recent exchange. Maya remained standing alone in the corridor, drawing a deep breath. She recognized that this commitment would push her to the very edge of her self-imposed limitations. Nevertheless, Maya saw no alternative. She was weary of concealing her true self, tired of allowing others to believe they could inflict harm without consequence. Maya recalled her father's words from the previous evening. "You didn't start this fight, but you have to be the one to end it." Now, she understood these weren't mere suggestions. They represented a personal responsibility she had to embrace. Maya harbored no desire for conflict, but she refused to be defeated again. Her heart began to settle. With a newfound resolve and inner strength, Maya proceeded down the lengthy hallway. A growing sense of confidence bloomed within her, as if she had finally rediscovered the fortitude lost to her own anxieties. This afternoon, following the conclusion of classes, Maya would confront her most significant challenge since arriving at Brooklyn High. Positioned behind the gymnasium, she had no certainty about the outcome of this impending clash, but one thing was clear: she would never retreat again. That evening, the sky above Brooklyn wore a somber, muted gray, as if the very atmosphere acknowledged the gravity of the impending confrontation. Maya exited her final class with a quiet, intense determination burning within her. She walked through the school's corridors, the rhythmic echo of her footsteps on the tiled floor accompanying her. Her heart pounded, not from apprehension, but from the certainty that she was about to face an event she had always sidestepped. A genuine confrontation, one where she could no longer afford to remain a passive observer. As Maya rounded the last bend in the hallway, the athletic field situated behind the school came into view. A small gathering of approximately 20 students had already convened, their hushed whispers and palpable anticipation filling the air. Maya's gaze swept over them, pausing momentarily on Ashley Mitchell, who stood centrally amidst the group, exuding her characteristic challenging aura. Ashley stood with an air of haughty confidence, her arms crossed defensively. Flanking her were Brianna, Courtney, Zach, and Luke. They all regarded Maya with a mixture of curiosity and eager anticipation, clearly expecting an entertaining spectacle. Ashley tilted her head slightly, a condescending smirk gracing her lips as Maya approached. She stepped forward, her voice clear and carrying, deliberately pitched just loud enough for everyone to hear. "I honestly thought you'd have scurried away like the timid little mouse you are, Maya, but I'm pleased you still possess a shred of courage to make an appearance." A wave of muffled giggles rippled through the assembly behind Ashley, but Maya remained unperturbed. She met Ashley's gaze with a steady, profound intensity, her features devoid of any discernible emotion. This calm, resolute expression caused Ashley to feel, for a fleeting instant, that something was amiss, as though she had inadvertently stepped into a situation beyond her command. Ashley, however, swiftly dismissed the sensation. She offered a condescending smirk, raising her voice so the entire crowd could hear. "Today, I intend to impart a lesson you will carry with you for the remainder of your days. It is imperative that you comprehend your rightful place here, your place as someone universally unwelcome." Ashley advanced once more, narrowing the distance between them to less than 2 meters. A palpable tension enveloped the onlookers, their attention now exclusively fixed upon the 2 central figures. Maya stood motionless, her eyes locked onto Ashley's, radiating a coldness bordering on unnerving. When she spoke, her voice was measured, yet carried a weight and conviction that commanded universal attention. "Ashley, you will come to regret this decision." Maya's quiet but potent warning seemed to momentarily suspend time for everyone present. The crowd fell into an immediate, profound silence, no one daring to disturb the stillness with even the slightest sound. Ashley's brow furrowed, a familiar sense of disquiet beginning to stir within her. However, her ingrained pride and arrogance precluded any thought of withdrawal. She felt compelled to press onward to preserve her reputation before the assembled students. "Oh, I'm absolutely terrified," Ashley declared mockingly, attempting to mask her escalating unease. She turned towards Zach and Luke, giving a subtle nod that signaled her intention for them to intervene. Zach and Luke promptly moved to her side, positioning themselves behind Ashley, their expressions radiating defiance. Zach, tall and possessing the physique of a football star, stood with his arms crossed, projecting an intimidating presence. Luke, conversely, sported a roguish grin, evidently eager to engage in any form of physical altercation with pronounced enthusiasm. Ashley was convinced that the sheer pressure exerted by her companions would be sufficient to deter Maya without the necessity of resorting to actual physical force. However, she was mistaken. Maya remained steadfast, displaying no apprehension in the face of the collective pressure from Ashley and her associates. She simply observed them in silence, as if she had already anticipated every forthcoming development. Ashley's patience began to fray, her frustration and confusion mounting in response to Maya's unnerving equanimity. "Enough, Maya. And who precisely do you imagine yourself to be, standing here and daring to challenge me?" Ashley took another step forward, closing the remaining distance, her eyes ablaze with a mixture of anger and vexation. Maya met Ashley's gaze once more, and in that instant she understood that there was no turning back. She recalled her father's admonition, "You don't start the fight, but you have to be the one to finish it." Maya realized that this was the pivotal moment for her to assert herself, to defend her position with absolute clarity and decisiveness. "I offered you a warning," Maya stated deliberately, each word enunciated with precision. "But if you are still intent on proceeding, then prepare yourself for the repercussions." Ashley experienced a faint tremor of apprehension in her chest upon hearing Maya's confident assertion, yet she maintained a semblance of composure and turned to address the onlookers. "Do you see this? This young girl genuinely believes she can intimidate me." The crowd's laughter erupted once more, though this time it lacked its earlier conviction, sounding almost hesitant. It appeared that even those observing the exchange were beginning to sense a shift in the prevailing atmosphere. They started to question whether Ashley truly maintained control of the situation. Maya stood unyielding, her gaze resolute and more serene than ever before. She no longer harbored fear, nor did she possess any reason to evade this confrontation. While this conflict was not of her choosing, it was unfolding, and she was determined not to be subjugated again. The charged and oppressive atmosphere enveloped the entire athletic field behind the school. It was evident to all that the events about to transpire would irrevocably shape each individual's standing and ultimate destiny. And Maya understood that the final decisive chapter of this conflict had just commenced. The tension that permeated the air at the school's rear grounds seemed to momentarily freeze before erupting. Every eye was fixed upon Maya and Ashley. In that fleeting moment, Maya remained perfectly still, her breathing even, her gaze steely and unwavering as she looked directly at Ashley, a silent testament to her refusal to yield. Ashley felt a surge of unease cascade through her, but her pride, coupled with the scrutiny of the surrounding onlookers, compelled her to act. She exchanged a look with Zach, and he immediately stepped forward, a smug, arrogant expression on his face, confident that his superior physical prowess would swiftly resolve the encounter. Zach advanced towards Maya, his demeanor defiant. He remained silent, merely smirking as he raised his hand, intending to forcefully push Maya to the ground, a tactic he had employed with countless opponents on the football field. However, Zach had gravely miscalculated his opponent this time. In a blink, before Zach's substantial hand could make contact with Maya, she smoothly evaded his attempt with a swift, astonishingly agile maneuver. Maya shifted to her right with lightning speed, grasping Zach's wrist and utilizing his own momentum to execute a swift bodily rotation. Moments later, Zach felt his equilibrium completely compromised. Before he could process the unfolding events, Maya expertly applied a precise push-and-pull technique, sending Zach toppling to the ground with a resounding thud. The impact echoed loudly through the crowd's absolute silence. Zach lay sprawled on the ground, gasping in utter disbelief. His eyes were wide with astonishment at the events that had just transpired. A towering, formidable football player like himself had been effortlessly subdued in a mere fraction of a second by a girl as petite as Maya. The sheer astonishment was evident on the faces of every student witnessing the scene. No one could have possibly foreseen such an outcome. Ashley stood rooted to the spot, her face visibly ashen, the fear she had been attempting to conceal now starkly apparent. However, before Ashley could regain her composure, Luke, ever eager to instigate trouble, surged forward with a furious expression, determined to vindicate his friend. Luke uttered no words. He charged directly at Maya, clenching his fist. But Maya, possessing the composure and refined technique she had cultivated since childhood, remained unfazed. She smoothly sidestepped, allowing Luke to rush past her just in time. Her movements were as fluid as a dancer's, yet executed with meticulous precision. She instantly seized Luke's wrist, pivoted her body, and expertly trapped his arm behind his back in an astonishing maneuver. Luke cried out in pain as his arm was contorted into an agonizingly uncomfortable position. He struggled, but the more he moved, the more intense the agony became. Maya maintained her grip, refraining from inflicting further pain, but sufficient to ensure Luke understood the futility of resistance. Mere seconds later, Luke had no choice but to drop to his knees, his face contorted in a grimace of pain and humiliation. At that precise moment, the entire crowd stood frozen, their eyes wide with shock and awe, utterly incredulous at the unfolding spectacle. Maya calmly released Luke's arm, took a single, deliberate step backward, her gaze still piercing and unwavering as she directed it towards Ashley, as if to underscore that she was not someone to be easily vanquished. For the first time in her existence, Ashley felt a genuine wave of fear infiltrate her thoughts. She had never conceived that her influence could be challenged with such severity. Zach and Luke, two of her most steadfast and formidable allies, upon whom she had always depended, now lay on the ground, injured and mortified by the girl they had once disdainfully underestimated. Ashley's customary confidence rapidly dissipated, replaced by a growing confusion and apprehension that intensified with each passing second. Brianna and Courtney, positioned behind Ashley, remained frozen, too intimidated to intervene. They exchanged nervous, panicked glances. The murmurs emanating from the surrounding students began to intensify, and this time their conversations no longer depicted Maya as a victim, but rather as an individual who had managed to shock and impress everyone present. Maya stood her ground, drawing a deep breath to steady herself. She felt no elation from incapacitating Zach and Luke, but she recognized the necessity of her actions. Her intention was not to inflict harm, but she could no longer tolerate the pervasive, unprovoked bullying. Ashley faced Maya, attempting to mask her fear and discomposure with her characteristic arrogant facade. However, she found herself unable to maintain this pretense any longer. Her voice quivered, tinged with a potent blend of anger and confusion. "You genuinely believe you have achieved victory?" Maya regarded Ashley, her gaze more frigid and lucid than ever before. Her voice resonated clearly, audible to the entirety of the assembled crowd. "I cautioned you. You initiated this confrontation, not I." This simple statement struck Ashley with the force of a cold, drenching splash. For the first time in her life, she grasped the stark reality that there was absolutely nothing she could do to salvage the situation. The authority she had once held in such high esteem was now disintegrating before the eyes of every student in the school. Amidst the profound silence of the crowd, Maya deliberately took a step backward, her gaze remaining resolute and unwavering. She had no premonition of what might transpire next, but one certainty remained. She had unequivocally concluded this confrontation on her own terms. Maya had just begun to turn away, leaving behind the stunned silence of the onlookers, when suddenly a desperate, enraged scream pierced the air from behind her. Ashley, her face contorted in a loss of self-control, was no longer concerned with her image or her honor. The spectacle before her eyes was an unacceptable outcome, a crushing defeat she had never remotely envisioned. Rage surged through her, and Ashley lunged at Maya from behind, desperately hoping this surprise assault would help her reclaim any vestiges of her lost dignity. However, Ashley had gravely misjudged the situation. Maya's guard had never faltered, as her rigorous training had ingrained in her an unwavering vigilance against potential threats. The instant Ashley made contact with Maya's back, Maya reacted with instantaneous, lightning-fast defensive precision. She smoothly sidestepped, grasping Ashley's wrist and expertly twisting her body to exert a gentle pull, causing Ashley to lose her balance completely and nearly fall to the ground. However, Maya prevented Ashley from succumbing to the fall. She held Ashley in a precarious stance, just enough to allow Ashley to fully comprehend her own helplessness and utter failure. Ashley stared with panic at the ground below, her body trembling with a potent mixture of fear and mortification. This was the first instance in her life where Ashley truly apprehended her own insignificance and powerlessness. Once a firm believer in her own strength, dominance, and invincibility, she was now reduced to a struggling, pathetic figure, entirely at Maya's mercy. Maya leaned close to Ashley's ear, her voice a chilling whisper, clear and sharp, cutting through Ashley's pride with finality. "You are never truly strong, and you will never hold dominion over me." These words struck Ashley's heart like a piercing projectile. They not only shattered her fabricated confidence to its core, but also obliterated any illusion of absolute power that she had meticulously constructed and fiercely protected. Ashley shivered, her breathing becoming rapid, her eyes wide with terror as the devastating truth gradually seeped into her consciousness. Maya slowly released her grip, gently allowing Ashley to stand on her now trembling legs. Ashley staggered backward a step, her eyes vacant as she stared into the distance. She glanced around, meeting the gazes of those who had once admired or feared her. Now, however, all that remained was a palpable sense of contempt and pity. An immense, unbearable pain radiated throughout Ashley's being. This was the precise moment when the authority she had once wielded so firmly had utterly crumbled before the eyes of everyone present. Brianna and Courtney, who had consistently stood by Ashley, now quietly retreated, their eyes averted from hers, no longer willing to be associated with her predicament. Even Zach and Luke, who had only just regained their footing after their own humiliating experiences, simply lowered their heads in silence, displaying no inclination to offer Ashley any further protection. They had all abandoned her at the very moment she needed them most. Ashley felt an overwhelming wave of solitude wash over her. She had once believed that power was the ultimate prize, but now that power had completely vanished, leaving behind a vast emptiness she knew not how to fill. Tears began to well in her eyes, but she fought to suppress them, unwilling to succumb to further emotional distress in front of the gathered individuals. Maya remained stationary, her gaze composed and unwavering, fixed upon Ashley. She felt no elation at Ashley's downfall, but she understood the necessity of this resolution to decisively end their acrimonious discord. She was no longer the one who had to endure, and it was imperative for Ashley to recognize that no one could perpetually dominate or harass others without facing repercussions. Ashley slowly retreated, her legs feeling as though they were burdened by countless stones. Every eye followed her slow, defeated progress. She turned and fled, quickly departing the school grounds, engulfed in the most profound humiliation she had ever experienced. Her authority had completely disintegrated, and she knew with certainty that it could never be reclaimed. As Ashley's retreating figure vanished from sight, the crowd began to murmur, a rising tide of conversations. However, these discussions were now markedly different. They spoke of Maya with profound respect and genuine admiration. Maya looked around, exhaling a soft sigh of relief. At last, she had accomplished what her father had always desired, to conclude the conflict with clarity and decisiveness without inflicting unnecessary harm on anyone. Maya turned and walked away, leaving the school grounds with a distinctly altered atmosphere. She understood that this confrontation had not only facilitated her own rediscovery, but had also conveyed a potent message to everyone who had witnessed it. True strength never originates from intimidation or subjugation of others, but from an inner fortitude, from the courage and capability to confront challenges without losing oneself. And this, Maya recognized, was her most significant triumph in this ordeal. The following day, as the morning sunlight streamed through the windows and illuminated the corridors of Brooklyn High, the entire school seemed to be enveloped in an unfamiliar atmosphere, one that had never been felt before. If the preceding day marked the downfall of Ashley Mitchell, then today was the day the entire student body had to adapt to a new reality, one where all previous hierarchies had completely dissolved. Ashley navigated the hallway with a heavy heart and a bewildered mind. Never before had her steps felt so laborious, as if the very floor of this familiar school had abruptly transformed into something alien. The gazes that had once conveyed fear, admiration, or even a cautious distance had undergone a drastic alteration. Now they were marked by indifference, avoidance, or, more distressingly, pity. This was an emotion Ashley had never encountered, and it was gradually eroding her once formidable self-esteem. Ashley lowered her head, endeavoring to evade the scrutinizing glances that followed her. The whispers that reached her ears no longer carried admiration or apprehension. Instead, they were imbued with a blend of curiosity and insincere sympathy. She swiftly realized that the power she had painstakingly cultivated and reinforced over years had utterly collapsed in the span of a single afternoon. She was now but a faint silhouette amidst the throng of the crowded hallway. Meanwhile, in a different section of the hallway, Maya entered the school with a composed and natural demeanor, as if the previous day's events had been inconsequential. She displayed no outward signs of elation or smugness from her victory, for in her heart she had never perceived it as a triumph worth celebrating. Maya's sole desire was to live peacefully, pursue her studies without incident, and avoid becoming a target for anyone. However, the perception of Maya within Brooklyn High had undergone a profound transformation. The students who had previously remained on the periphery, silently observing from a distance, now regarded Maya with a mixture of admiration and intrigue. They did not fully comprehend her, but they held one absolute certainty. Maya was not weak, and she was not susceptible to succumbing to external pressure. A few students offered nods of greeting as she passed, while others observed her with silent respect. Maya responded to each with a gentle, sincere smile. Yet, she harbored no intention of assuming Ashley's former position. Maya had never aspired to leadership or control over others. Her only wish was to be respected and to live her life according to her own terms. Not far from Maya's vicinity, Ashley stood motionless by her locker, her hands trembling, her palms slick with sweat as she clearly overheard the hushed conversations around her. "Ashley has truly lost everything," one voice remarked. "I never imagined she'd endure a day like this." Another voice chimed in. "Indeed, from reigning as queen to becoming the school's laughingstock in mere hours." Ashley fought back tears, her heart aching as though it were being suffocated. She came to the stark realization that the power she had once considered boundless was, in fact, fragile and capable of vanishing with such startling ease. Brianna and Courtney, once her most devoted followers, now passed her with averted gazes, their silence a deafening indictment. Even Zach, her brother, who had always championed her, stood at a distance, his expression a mixture of profound disappointment and helpless resignation. Simultaneously, Luke, notorious for reveling in chaos, deliberately distanced himself as if Ashley had become an unwelcome association. Ashley was forced to confront the stark reality. The authority she had wielded was built entirely on intimidation and hollow adoration. Once that facade crumbled, she was left with nothing but profound isolation and consuming shame. As Ashley's isolation became more pronounced, Maya experienced a growing unease. She had never wished for Ashley to endure the same agony and ostracization she herself had once known. Despite Ashley's past transgressions, Maya empathized deeply with the universal sting of abandonment. Yet, Mia recognized that this was not her responsibility. Ashley had forged her own path, dictated by her treatment of others, and the current outcome was an unavoidable consequence. Maya could not alter this truth, nor did she wish to be ensnared in another power struggle. She had no desire to succeed Ashley or to establish a new hierarchy. Maya proceeded down the hallway with deliberate composure, her eyes fixed forward, avoiding the probing scrutiny of her peers. Whether intentional or not, she had become an emblem at Brooklyn High, a beacon of fortitude, embodying the strength to confront injustice without compromising her integrity. Each step Maya took resonated through the school corridors, a silent yet powerful declaration. Genuine strength emanates not from dominating others, but from an inner wellspring of resolve and the conviction to uphold one's principles. While Ashley desperately clung to the fading remnants of her past dominance, Maya steadfastly continued on her chosen path, guided by her unwavering beliefs. This day marked a profound and irreversible transformation at Brooklyn High, signifying the dissolution of manufactured power and the ascendance of the authentic values Maya represented. The future remained uncertain, yet one certainty prevailed. Brooklyn High would never again be the same. The usual vibrancy of Brooklyn High gradually reasserted itself following the recent upheaval, but a shared understanding settled among the student body. The events of the preceding days had left an indelible impression on every student. In this newly established order, Ashley Mitchell no longer reigned as the unchallenged queen, while Maya Johnson, who had never sought dominion, had unexpectedly emerged as a symbol of authentic courage and resilience. During lunch in the cafeteria that day, the whispers about the dramatic shift at Brooklyn High continued unabated. Maya, as was her custom, occupied a corner table, unfazed by the curious glances directed her way. Not far from her, Ashley sat alone, her surrounding tables conspicuously vacant. She remained in silent contemplation, her gaze vacant, fixed upon her untouched meal, desperately trying to shield herself from the crushing weight of her humiliation. Maya observed Ashley's solitary state from a distance, experiencing no sense of vindication. Instead, a profound empathy washed over her, for she understood the profound ache of loneliness and isolation. After a brief internal debate, Maya rose gracefully, gathered her tray, and slowly approached Ashley's table. The entire cafeteria fell into an immediate, hushed stillness. All eyes were fixed upon the two girls, anticipating the unfolding interaction. Ashley slowly raised her head, her eyes widening in astonishment as she registered Maya's presence. Speechless, her throat constricted with shock and a tremor of apprehension. Maya met Ashley's gaze directly, her eyes now devoid of any animosity, radiating a calm, resolute strength that was entirely new. "It's over," Maya stated softly, yet with absolute clarity, each word resonating audibly for all to hear. "I have no intention of continuing this futile conflict. I trust you feel the same." Maya's simple yet impactful declaration echoed through the silent expanse of the cafeteria. Ashley remained frozen, her body rigid as if turned to stone, the familiar sensations of degradation and defeat overwhelming her once more. Yet, deep within, a realization dawned. Maya did not seek to inflict further embarrassment. This was simply a definitive pronouncement, a clear signal that it was time to move forward. Maya offered no further words. She turned and walked away, leaving Ashley to contend with the collective gaze of the entire school. Maya's departure was marked by an effortless grace, devoid of any ostentatious display of pride or superiority. She departed with the quiet dignity of one who needed no external validation, no triumph, and no power derived from others. Ashley remained immobile, the weight of her pain and shame amplified by the lingering silence. Those nearby gradually averted their attention, resuming their meals amidst hushed murmurs, leaving Ashley to confront the stark reality of her recent experience. The power she had once considered unassailable had completely evaporated. Leaving a void Ashley struggled to comprehend. As Maya exited the cafeteria, the gentle warmth of the sun kissed her face, offering solace for the deep emotional wounds she had once endured. She recognized that life at Brooklyn High would now be less burdensome, not only for herself but for countless others who had suffered under the subtle tyranny of the false power Ashley had once embodied. More significantly, Maya gained a profound understanding of the true nature of influence and authority. Authentic power resided not in coercion, suppression, or intimidation. It was not about asserting dominance or claiming victory. True power was the mastery of oneself, the ability to preserve one's dignity and composure when confronted with life's most daunting challenges. As Maya moved on, any lingering doubts or whispered gossip about her reserved demeanor vanished. Every student at Brooklyn High now understood that Maya's motivations were fundamentally different from Ashley's. Maya had never pursued power for its own sake. Her sole desire was to live in an environment where human dignity was consistently respected, where no one endured harm from others for the ephemeral pursuit of perceived power. This profound understanding permeated the school, gradually settling into the hearts of every student. Those who had previously remained silent bystanders, complicit participants, or observers of bullying began a serious process of self-reflection. Brooklyn High had transformed from a place where power was predicated on fear and subjugation. Now, there was a universal recognition that true strength lay in the courage to stand firm and defend one's values, never allowing external forces to diminish or control them. The narrative of Maya and Ashley became an enduring and invaluable lesson etched into the collective memory of Brooklyn High. It served as a constant reminder that, regardless of their circumstances or location, the paramount importance lay in remaining authentic to oneself, facing challenges with unwavering confidence, and resisting the erosion of one's inner self due to external pressures. This, they understood, was the ultimate form of personal power. The power of self-respect, courage, and an unyielding inner fortitude. Maya's journey illuminated a vital truth. Genuine strength is not found in subjugating or controlling others, but in the capacity to uphold self-respect, demonstrate resilience, and maintain composure amidst life's adversities. The highest form of power any individual can achieve is self-mastery. And what of you? If you were in Maya's situation, how would you confront those who sought to bully you? If you found this narrative impactful, we encourage you to express your appreciation by liking and sharing this video with your friends and subscribing to our channel to help us disseminate positive values to a wider audience. Thank you for your continued support and for listening.